My name's Jason Carter, and I'm not the kind of guy who overreacts. I've spent most of my life solving problems, the kind you can fix with a wrench or a little elbow grease. I'm a plumber by trade, and I work part-time as a school maintenance supervisor. For me, life has always been about keeping things running smoothly, whether it's a leaky pipe or my family. That's why, for 14 years, I never doubted my wife, Emma. We were high school sweethearts, married young, built a home, and had two great kids, Emily, who's 12, and Ryan, who's 10. Sure, Emma's job and insurance kept her busy, sometimes busier than I liked, but I trusted her. She had this way of lighting up a room with her laugh, and I loved her for it. But trust can be a funny thing. It's strong until it isn't. 3 months ago, Emma started changing. It was subtle at first, a little more time on her phone, a few more business trips than usual, nights when she came home later than expected. I noticed she started keeping her phone close, flipping its screen down on the table, or taking calls in the other room. One night, she came home late from a team dinner, and I caught the faintest whiff of cologne that wasn't mine. I didn't say anything right away. I told myself it was nothing, but the doubts kept creeping in, and once they were there, they wouldn't leave. I'm not the jealous type, but I'm also not a fool. When Emma left for a nearby conference in Baltimore, something in me snapped. I wasn't going to sit at home wondering anymore. If there was something going on, I was going to find out. I packed an overnight bag, called my mom to watch the kids, and hit the road. The 2-hour drive gave me plenty of time to think. Too much, really. The more I thought about the late nights, the new perfume, the distant looks, the angrier I got. By the time I pulled into the Marriott parking lot, I wasn't nervous. I was determined. Inside, the lobby was full of business people checking in and out. I walked straight to the front desk and introduced myself as Emma Carter's husband. The clerk smiled politely and handed me a key to her room after I confirmed my ID. The elevator ride up to the second floor felt like it lasted an eternity. Standing outside her door, I hesitated for half a second. Then I slid the key card into the lock and pushed the door open. Emma was at the desk, her back to me, papers and her laptop spread out in front of her. She spun around when she heard the door, her eyes wide. "Jason," she said, startled. "What are you doing here?" Her surprise seemed real, and for a moment I felt like an idiot. "Thought I'd surprise you," I said, stepping inside. "Figured we could grab dinner." She smiled, walked over, and kissed me. "You're so sweet. I didn't think I'd see you until tomorrow." She seemed so genuinely happy to see me that I almost believed I'd been imagining things. "Almost. I hope I'm not interrupting anything," I said, glancing at the scattered paperwork. "Not at all," she said, laughing. "Just finishing up a few things. Are you staying the night? I could really use the company." I smiled, but I didn't commit. "Let's see how the night goes." Emma headed to the bathroom to take a quick shower before dinner, leaving me alone in the room. I sat down on the bed, trying to push the doubts out of my mind. But then I saw her toiletry case sitting on the dresser. I told myself I was being stupid, but my head was pounding from the drive, and I figured she might have some aspirin. I unzipped the case and started rummaging. That's when I found it. A pack of contraceptives. I froze, staring at the little box like it was a grenade. We hadn't used these in years, not since my vasectomy after Ryan was born. I felt my chest tighten, anger bubbling up from somewhere deep inside me. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This was something real, something undeniable. When Emma came out of the bathroom, toweling her hair dry, I had already put the box back and zipped the case shut. I didn't say anything. "Not yet. Ready for dinner?" she asked cheerfully, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "Oh, I'm ready," I said, forcing a smile. As we walked down to the restaurant, my mind raced. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but one thing was certain. I wasn't letting this go. As we walked into the restaurant, Emma slipped her arm through mine, laughing about how surprised she was to see me. She was playing the part of the loving wife perfectly, but now I was looking for the cracks. We sat at a table near the window, the soft lighting casting a warm glow over her face. To anyone else, we looked like a happy couple. But in my mind, all I could see was that pack of contraceptives. "What's good here?" I asked casually, scanning the menu. "The filet's amazing," Emma said, smiling as she leaned back in her chair. "We had it the first night of the conference." "We?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She hesitated for a split second before brushing it off. Oh, me and a few coworkers. It's been such a busy few days, but the food's been great. I nodded, pretending to focus on the menu. My gut told me she wasn't lying about the food at least, but something about the way she avoided specifics didn't sit right. As the waiter came to take our order, Emma suggested a bottle of rose to go with her filet. She was in good spirits, laughing easily, but I wasn't letting my guard down. So, I said after the waiter left, leaning forward, "Are you happy?" Emma tilted her head, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" "With everything, our life, the kids, the marriage." I kept my voice light, but I was watching her face closely. She reached across the table and took my hand. "Of course I am. Jason, we have a great life. A beautiful home, 2 wonderful kids, and you." She smiled, squeezing my hand. I couldn't ask for more. Her words were perfect. Too perfect. "Just making sure," I said, sitting back. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough to keep you happy." Emma laughed, calling me a silly goose, and launched into a story about a project at work. I let her talk, nodding in the right places, but my mind was elsewhere. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed. It was Freddie calling just as we'd planned. I excused myself and stepped into the lobby to take the call, giving Emma a reassuring smile on my way out. Freddie's voice came through on the other end. "How's it going, Jace?" "It's fine," I muttered, glancing over my shoulder to make sure I was out of earshot. "You ready?" Pipe burst at the school. "Got it," Freddie said. "Want me to add anything?" "No, that's perfect. Just call me again in 20 minutes. I hung up and walked back to the table, plastering on a smile. "Freddie called," I said as I sat down. "Apparently, there's a water pipe burst at the school. I might have to head back after dinner." Emma's face fell, but only slightly. "Oh no, can't they handle it without you?" "Maybe, but I'd feel better if I went." She nodded, taking a sip of her wine. "Well, it's too bad you can't stay. I was really looking forward to spending the night with you." Her words sounded sincere, but there was something off in her tone, like it didn't matter to her either way. As we finished dinner, I spotted him. Kirk Daniels. He was stepping out of the elevator across the lobby, dressed casually in jeans and a blazer. He glanced our way, then walked over with a smile. "Emma." "Jason, right?" he said, extending a hand. "That's me," I said, shaking his hand firmly. "I've heard a lot about you," Kirk said, smiling at Emma. "Stopped by your room earlier, but you weren't in. Figured I'd catch you later." Emma laughed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Yeah, I was probably downstairs at the session." I forced a smile, but my blood was boiling. Kirk left after a few pleasantries, and Emma's mood didn't shift an inch. When we got back to the room, I couldn't take it anymore. "I don't like him," I said flatly, dropping onto the bed. Emma turned, surprised. "Who?" "Kirk. I don't like the way he looks at you, and I don't like the way you talk about him." Emma sighed, crossing her arms. "Jason, you got to stop this. Kirk's just a coworker." "That's it." "Then quit," I said sharply. "I don't want you working with him anymore." Her expression hardened. "No, I'm not quitting my job just because you're paranoid." I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. "You want to keep working there? Fine. But don't expect me to sit around pretending I don't see what's going on." Emma rolled her eyes, muttering something under her breath as she grabbed her toiletries and headed into the bathroom. As soon as the door shut, I grabbed my phone and called Freddie again. "I'm heading out tonight," I said. "But this isn't over." It wasn't. Not by a long shot. When I left the hotel that night, I couldn't get Kirk's smug smile out of my mind. I replayed the brief conversation over and over, every word dripping with familiarity. "Stopped by your room earlier." He might as well have waved a red flag in my face. By the time I got home, the anger had settled into something colder. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to yell or throw things. But I was damn sure going to get the truth, no matter how ugly it was. The opportunity came faster than I expected. 2 days later, Emma and I attended her company's annual picnic, something I had been dreading. I didn't want to spend the day watching her laugh and chat with Kirk while pretending everything was fine. But I needed to keep my cool, and I needed to see them together. The picnic was held at a local park, a sprawling place with a lake, picnic tables, and a playground for the kids. Emily and Ryan ran off to play, leaving me and Emma to mingle with her coworkers. It didn't take long to spot Kirk. He was standing near the grill, talking to a group of people, and Emma wasted no time making her way over. I followed at a distance, watching as they exchanged easy smiles and leaned in just a little too close during their conversation. Then I noticed her, a striking woman with auburn hair and piercing blue eyes. She was watching Kirk and Emma, her expression a mix of anger and resignation. Rachel Daniels. I didn't know her personally, but I'd seen her in a few company photos Emma had shown me over the years. And from the way she was staring at her husband and mine, I knew we had something in common. I approached her slowly, giving her a polite nod. "Mrs. Daniels?" She turned to me, startled. "Yes, I'm Jason Carter, Emma's husband." Her eyes widened slightly, and then she gave a sad smile. "I was wondering when we'd meet. Do you have a minute to talk?" I asked. Rachel glanced at Kirk and Emma, who were now laughing together by the grill. "I think we should," she said. We found a quiet bench by the lake, far from the noise of the picnic. Rachel didn't waste any time. "I've known about them for a couple of months," she said, her voice low but steady. "Kirk hasn't admitted it, but I don't need him to. I've got enough proof." My stomach tightened. "Proof?" Rachel nodded, pulling her phone from her pocket. "Photos, recorded calls, timestamps. I've been documenting everything. And I know Emma's just as involved as Kirk." Hearing it out loud was like a punch to the gut. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. "Do you have anything I can use?" Rachel hesitated, then looked me in the eye. "Come to my house tomorrow morning. I'll show you everything." I agreed without hesitation, and we parted ways, both of us keeping our conversation quiet. When I returned to the picnic, Emma asked where I'd been. "Just walking around," I said. "Needed some air." She didn't push the issue, which only confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't paying attention to me anymore. The next morning, I dropped the kids off at my mom's and drove to Rachel's house. She greeted me at the door and led me to her den, where a computer monitor was set up on the coffee table. "You're going to want to sit down for this," she said. I didn't know what to expect, but when the live feed popped up on the screen, my heart sank. There they were, Emma and Kirk, entering a motel room together. The image was crystal clear, even if the sound was muffled. They didn't waste any time, no small talk, no hesitation. Clothes started coming off almost immediately. Rachel sat next to me, her arms crossed. I don't enjoy watching this either, but I needed proof. And now, so do you. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Watching Emma like this, with someone else, felt like someone had taken a sledgehammer to my chest. After a few minutes, I stood up. "I've seen enough." Rachel turned off the monitor and looked up at me. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath, the anger in me hardening into something colder. "I'm going to make sure she regrets every damn second of this." Rachel nodded, her expression firm. "If you need my help, you know where to find me." When I left her house, my plan was already forming. Emma had lied to me, betrayed me, and made a fool of me. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. 2 days after the company picnic, Emma sat across from me at breakfast, her tone light and casual. "I think I'll visit Nancy for a few days," she said, sipping her coffee. "It's been so stressful at work lately, and spending time with her might help me recharge." I nodded, forcing a smile. "That sounds nice. You deserve a break." She smiled, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes. Relief, maybe? It didn't matter. I already had my plan in motion. What Emma didn't know was that I had been to Nancy's house the day before. Her belongings, packed neatly in boxes, were already there. I had changed the locks on our house and frozen her access to our joint accounts. Everything was in place. When I arrived unannounced at Nancy's house later that evening, Emma opened the door, her expression instantly shifting to shock. She masked it quickly, plastering on a smile, but I saw the unease behind it. "Jason," she said brightly, "what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I said firmly, stepping past her into the house without waiting for an invitation. Nancy was sitting in the living room, flipping through a magazine. She looked up, saw the tension, and immediately excused herself. "I'll just be in the other room," she said, hurrying out of sight. Emma led me into the kitchen, her steps hesitant. She crossed her arms as she leaned against the counter. "What's this about?" she asked, her tone guarded. I met her gaze, my voice calm but cold. I've been thinking a lot about us, about our marriage, and I need to know if you've been honest with me. Her brow furrowed. Of course I've been honest. Jason, what's going on? I leaned forward, my eyes never leaving hers. I mean, really honest, Emma, because for months I've had my doubts. A lot of doubts. Her gaze flickered to the side, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. Jason, if this is about Kirk, I've already told you. He's just a co-worker. You're overthinking this. Overthinking, I said, my tone sharpening. No, Emma. Not this time. I reached into the manila envelope I had brought and pulled out the first photo. It showed her and Kirk walking into a motel room together. I placed it on the table between us. Her face drained of color. What is this? She demanded, her voice rising. Evidence, I said flatly, pulling out another photo and sliding it beside the first. This one showed them embracing outside the motel. Her hands clenched into fists. You've been spying on me? Following me? That's disgusting, Jason. Disgusting? I snapped. No, Emma. What's disgusting is sneaking off to a motel with another man while your husband is at home with your kids. Her composure cracked. You had no right to do this. No right. I had every right, I said, my voice steady but laced with anger. You're my wife. You think you can betray me, betray our family, and I'm just supposed to ignore it? Emma stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. You're unbelievable. Spying on me, invading my privacy. Do you even hear yourself? I stayed seated, watching her carefully. When she paused to catch her breath, I reached into the envelope again and pulled out the divorce papers. This ends now, I said, sliding them across the table. Your things are at Nancy's. The locks at home are changed. Your access to our accounts is gone. Sign these papers, or take it to court and lose even more. Emma stared at the papers like they were a foreign object. You can't do this, she said weakly. You have no grounds. I reached into the envelope again, pulling out a DVD case. This is otherwise, I said, setting it on the table. 2 hours of you and Kirk at the motel. Every second caught on camera. Want me to play it for you? Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But then the anger flared again. You're a sick bastard, you know that? She hissed, spying on me like some pathetic loser. What kind of man does that? The kind of man who's not going to let someone walk all over him, I said coldly. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small object, a safety pin. You know what this is? I asked, holding it up between my fingers. Emma looked at it, confused. This is what I used to poke holes in every condom you've used with Kirk for the last 2 months, I said, my voice icy. Her eyes widened in shock. You didn't? Oh, I did, I said, standing. 48 of them, to be exact. You can thank me later when you're explaining a surprise to Kirk. She screamed, grabbing the papers and throwing them at me. You're insane. Maybe, I said, smirking as I picked up the papers. But at least I'm not a liar. I turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. My dad will be here in 10 minutes with the rest of your things. You're not coming back to my house. Goodbye, Emma. As I walked out, her voice rose behind me, shouting accusations and curses. I didn't care. I was done. Nancy peeked out from the living room as I passed. Jason, are you okay? I stopped and looked at her. I will be. I stepped outside into the cool night air, taking a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control. As I drove away from Nancy's house, my mind buzzed with everything that had to happen next. Confronting Emma was just the beginning. She thought the divorce papers and the photos were the worst of it, but she had no idea what I had planned. First, I stopped by my lawyer's office. I'd already given him copies of the evidence Rachel had shared, photos, timestamps, and even the DVD from the motel. Now, with Emma formally served, we went over the next steps. Jason, he said, looking over the paperwork, this is about as airtight as it gets. The custody arrangement should go in your favor, especially with the video evidence. That's the idea, I said. I don't just want the kids. I want to make sure she can't fight me on it. She doesn't deserve a damn thing after what she's done. He nodded, making a few notes. We'll include provisions to protect your assets, too. Her access to your accounts is already restricted, but we'll make sure she can't claim anything else. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a small surge of satisfaction. Emma had destroyed our marriage, and now I was making sure she didn't walk away unscathed. Next, I made a call to Rachel. "Jason," she said, picking up on the first ring. "How did it go?" "She knows," I said simply. "But I'm not done yet. I want to hit them where it really hurts." Rachel hesitated, then said, "You're talking about the company, aren't you?" "Exactly," I said. "Do you still have that HR contact you mentioned?" Rachel sighed. "I do, but you need to be sure about this. If we report them, it could ruin their careers." "That's the idea," I said coldly. "Are you in?" There was a brief pause before she replied. "I'm in." The call ended with a plan. Rachel and I would report the affair to their employer, Globy's Insurance. Kirk and Emma's relationship violated the company's code of conduct, and we had enough proof to ensure they wouldn't be able to explain their way out of it. The next day, I moved the plan forward. Rachel and I emailed the HR department, attaching a few choice pieces of evidence. Photos of Kirk and Emma entering the motel, timestamps matching their supposed work hours, and copies of text conversations Rachel had intercepted. Within hours, I received a response from HR thanking us for bringing the matter to their attention. They assured us the situation would be investigated thoroughly. By the end of the week, both Emma and Kirk were suspended pending further review. But I wasn't done yet. While the company handled their investigation, I focused on cutting Emma out of my life completely. I went through our joint accounts, ensuring every dollar was accounted for and moved into a secure account in my name. The house, which was in my name alone, was already locked down. That Friday, my dad and I packed up the rest of Emma's things. Every photo of us together, every piece of clothing, every memory of our life, boxed up and delivered to Nancy's house. By the time Emma returned from her relaxing visit, there would be nothing left for her at home. Standing in our empty bedroom, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and above all, relief. The woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. But now, I was free of her lies. As I locked the front door for the last time that day, I thought about Emily and Ryan. This was for them too. They deserved better than a mother who put her selfish desires above her family. By the time I got back into my truck, my phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. HR just called. They're both terminated. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Good. Now we've finished this. With Emma and Kirk officially terminated from their jobs, I could have stopped there. They were both jobless, exposed, and humiliated. But as I sat in the quiet of my living room that evening, I knew it wasn't enough. Not yet. Emma hadn't just betrayed me. She'd insulted everything we built together. She deserved to feel the weight of what she'd done, and I was going to make sure of it. The next phase of my plan started with a neighborhood barbecue. Our block had always been tight-knit, and Emma and I were well known among the neighbors. Emily and Ryan played with the other kids, and we attended every 4th of July cookout and Christmas party. Emma had always been good at charming people, but now I held the truth and I wasn't keeping it quiet anymore. At the barbecue, I kept the conversation casual at first. People asked where Emma was, and I gave polite, vague answers. But when one neighbor, Kathy, pressed me further, I decided to give her just enough to work with. "Well, Kathy," I said, sighing theatrically, "Emma's staying at her sister's right now. Things have been complicated. Let's just say I found out she was spending more time with a co-worker than with her family." Kathy's eyes widened. "Oh my goodness, Jason. Are you okay?" I nodded solemnly. "I'm fine. It's the kids I'm worried about. They don't deserve this." Word spread like wildfire after that. By the end of the barbecue, at least a dozen people knew about Emma's affair. I didn't have to spell out the details. People filled in the blanks themselves. By the next day, our mutual friends were texting me with their sympathies, and Emma's social standing began to crumble. But the biggest blow came the following week when I reached out to her parents. Emma's father, David, was a traditional, no-nonsense man who prided himself on family values. He had always been supportive of our marriage, and I knew he wouldn't take the news of her betrayal lightly. "David," I said when we met for coffee, "this isn't easy for me to say, but you deserve to know the truth." I laid out the facts, carefully and calmly, showing him the photos and explaining what had happened. David's face hardened as he looked through the evidence. "I can't believe this," he said, shaking his head. "She's embarrassed the entire family." She made her choices, I said, leaning back in my chair. Now she has to live with them. David promised to talk to Emma, but I could tell he was already distancing himself. He didn't condone her actions, and I knew it would take a long time, if ever, for their relationship to recover. Meanwhile, Kirk wasn't faring any better. Rachel had followed through on her own plans, filing for divorce and exposing Kirk's affair to his family and friends. From what she told me, Kirk's parents were furious, and his siblings had cut ties with him entirely. Emma and Kirk were spiraling, and I wasn't about to stop their fall. A few weeks later, Emma texted me, asking to meet. I agreed, curious to see what she had to say. We met at a local diner, and when she walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked tired, worn down like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Jason," she said, sitting across from me, "I know I've made mistakes, but can't we fix this?" I raised an eyebrow. "Fix this? After everything you've done?" She looked down at her hands. "I know I messed up, but we have kids. We have a history. Doesn't that count for anything?" I leaned forward, my voice steady. "It counted for everything, Emma, but you threw it away. And now, you're dealing with the consequences." She didn't argue. She just nodded, tears filling her eyes. As I walked out of the diner that day, I felt no pity for her. She had made her choices, and now she was living with them. Weeks after Emma's desperate attempt to reconcile at the diner, I got a call from Rachel. "You're not going to believe this," she said, her voice tinged with dark amusement. "What now?" I asked, expecting more fallout about Kirk's firing or her ongoing divorce. "Kirk skipped town," Rachel said, her words deliberate. "Skipped town?" I leaned forward, gripping my coffee mug tightly. "What does that mean? Where did he go?" Rachel let out a low chuckle. "No one knows. My lawyer says he's trying to dodge the divorce proceedings. He's probably headed somewhere he thinks he can start fresh, but it won't help him. I'll find him eventually." The words hung in the air between us. Kirk, the man Emma had blown up our entire life for, was nothing but a coward. A liar who ran the moment things got hard. "That sounds about right," I said, shaking my head. Rachel sighed. "Here's the kicker. Emma doesn't know. I think she's still staying at Nancy's, waiting for him to swoop in and save her." The irony of it all hit me hard. Emma had gambled everything. Our marriage, our family, her reputation, for Kirk. And now, he'd left her high and dry, with nothing but the wreckage of her choices. But just when I thought things couldn't get more surreal, they did. The following week, Nancy called me. I hadn't expected to hear from her, but I answered out of curiosity. "Jason," Nancy said, her tone unusually tense, "I need to tell you something." "What's going on?" I asked. "It's Emma. She's not well." I frowned, unsure of what she meant. "Not well how?" "She's been acting strange ever since Kirk disappeared. Depressed, sure, but also paranoid. She keeps saying someone is following her. She even accused me of spying on her for you." Nancy's voice dropped lower. "Jason, she's convinced someone's out to get her." My first instinct was disbelief. Emma had always been confident, almost brazen, but Nancy wasn't the type to exaggerate, and something about her tone sent a chill down my spine. "Do you think she's just stressed?" I asked cautiously. "I don't know," Nancy admitted. "But yesterday, she said she saw Kirk. That stopped me cold." "What?" "She swore she saw him across the street from the grocery store. She said he was watching her, but when she went over to confront him, he disappeared. I don't know if she's imagining things or if he's actually back, but it's unsettling." The conversation stuck with me long after it ended. I didn't believe Kirk had returned. Why would he? He had nothing to gain. But if Emma was unraveling, what did that mean for our kids? For her role in their lives? A week later, I got my answer. It was a Friday evening when Rachel called me again. Her voice was shaky, uncharacteristically uncertain. "Jason," she said, "I just got a letter from Kirk." "What?" My grip on the phone tightened. "It's not exactly a love letter," Rachel said bitterly. "He claims someone's been threatening him. That's why he left. He said he couldn't stay here because it wasn't safe." "What kind of threats?" I asked, my heart pounding. Rachel hesitated. "He didn't say exactly. Just that someone knows about his past, something from before he moved here. And he thinks whoever it is, they're coming for him." For the first time in months, I felt a twinge of unease. Kirk was a liar, but if someone really was after him, it raised a new question. Who? And why? The next few days were a blur of speculation. I thought about what Nancy had said, Emma seeing Kirk, her paranoia, her claims of being watched. I didn't believe in coincidences, and something about this situation didn't add up. Then, 2 nights later, the unexpected happened. I was getting ready for bed when the doorbell rang. It was nearly 10 p.m., and I wasn't expecting anyone. I grabbed a baseball bat. Old habits die hard, and went to the door. When I opened it, my breath caught. It was Emma. She looked pale, almost ghostly, her eyes wide and haunted. She was trembling, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Jason," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I need your help." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "Emma, what are you doing here? It's late." She glanced around nervously, as if expecting someone to jump out of the shadows. "I don't know where else to go. They're watching me." "Who's watching you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I don't know," she said, her voice breaking. I thought it was Kirk at first, but now, I think it's someone else. Someone who knows everything. My stomach twisted. "What do you mean, everything?" She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I think it's about Kirk. Something he did. Something I got dragged into without realizing it." "Emma," I said firmly, "you need to tell me what's going on. Now." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I can't. I need you to believe me. I need to know the kids are safe." "They're safe," I said, my voice cold. "But you're not making sense. If you want me to help you, you need to start talking." Emma opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say anything, headlights swept across the driveway. A dark car idled at the curb, its engine rumbling. Emma's face drained of color. "They're here." I turned to the car, my pulse racing. But before I could step forward, the car peeled away, tires screeching into the night. When I turned back, Emma was gone. She had vanished into the shadows, leaving me standing there, confused and angry. For days after, I heard nothing. Nancy said Emma hadn't returned to her house, and Rachel had no updates about Kirk. The whole situation felt like a loose thread I couldn't pull. But as the weeks went on, life returned to normal. I focused on Emily and Ryan, grateful for the stability I could still give them. Rachel became an even bigger part of our lives, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hope for the future. Emma remained a mystery, a ghost from a life I had left behind. And though part of me wanted answers, I knew some things were better left buried. Looking back, it's hard to believe how much has changed in just a few months. When Emma's betrayal came to light, it felt like my world was collapsing. But now, as I sit on the porch of my new home, watching Emily and Ryan play in the yard, I realize that sometimes destruction clears the way for something better. Life without Emma is quieter, more peaceful. The chaos and lies she brought into our home are gone, replaced by routines that make sense, by evenings filled with laughter instead of suspicion. The kids are thriving too. Emily has taken up drawing. She says it helps her express her feelings, and Ryan has started soccer. They've adjusted better than I could have hoped, and I know they're happier now. Rachel has become a steady presence in our lives. What started as an alliance born of necessity has grown into something deeper. She's kind, understanding, and has a way of making even the darkest days seem lighter. The kids adore her, and honestly so do I. Emma, on the other hand, is a shadow of her former self. After that night on my porch, she disappeared for weeks. Nancy eventually found her staying in a rundown motel, jumping at every noise and convinced someone was after her. Whatever Kirk had been running from, Emma believed she was caught in it too. She reached out to me once, sending a long, rambling email asking for forgiveness, for a second chance. I didn't respond, not because I'm bitter. Truthfully, I'm not, but because some doors are better left closed. From what I hear, she's still struggling. She's burned bridges with friends and family, and her reputation in town is beyond repair. I don't wish her ill, but I can't deny that her fate feels like a natural consequence of her choices. For me, the most important thing has been focusing on what really matters, my kids, and my future. I've learned to let go of the anger, to stop dwelling on the why of Emma's betrayal. Sometimes there isn't a satisfying answer, and that's okay. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through what I did, it's this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let fear or denial keep you from facing the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And when the dust settles, don't waste your energy on revenge. Focus on rebuilding, on creating a life that's worth living. Because that's what I've done. And for the first time in years, I feel free. Rachel and I are taking things slow, but there's a sense of hope in what we're building together. She's been a rock for me and the kids, and I can't imagine life without her now. As for Emily and Ryan, they're my biggest source of strength. Watching them grow and thrive reminds me every day why I fought so hard to protect our family from Emma's selfishness. They're my anchor, and they deserve nothing less than a father who's fully present and committed to their happiness. This chapter of my life is closing, and while it wasn't the story I wanted, it's one that's made me stronger. Emma's choices forced me to confront hard truths, but they also taught me the value of resilience, of knowing when to let go. In the end, I've learned that betrayal doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. And as I sit here, surrounded by the people who matter most, I know I made the right choice. I chose to move forward,